has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. We have a really interesting case, and a case that takes us back to the year 2003, where Elizabeth Holmes was an undergraduate student at Stanford University. Elizabeth Holmes, at the age of 19, founded a company named Theranos, whose whole objective was creating this machine with one drop of blood could diagnose all kinds of ailments, all kinds of diseases, just with this one drop of blood. Somehow she got some of the world's most powerful people to invest in this company. She was the ultimate salesperson. She had the ultimate, as they would say in Hebrew, chutzpah, to believe in something that was fraudulent right from the beginning. And according to the New York Times, the verdict signaled the end of an era. In Silicon Valley, where the line between talk and achievement is often vague, there's finally a limit to faking it. From Stanford University dropout to Theranos' $9 billion valuation to conviction, it's an epic rise and fall that will be chewed over in the coffee shops and juice bars of Palo Alto, California, until the tech industry departs for a new life in Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos off-world colonies. This is right from the New York Times. For a decade, Miss Holmes fooled savvy investors, hundreds of smart employees, an all-star board, and a media eager to anoint a new star, even or especially if she had no qualifications. Just as Silicon Valley is a cartoonish version of American notions about the virtues of hard work and getting rich quick, so Miss Holmes was a heightened version of Silicon Valley. Whenever anyone, a regulator, an investor, a reporter, wanted to know a little more about exactly how the Theranos machines functioned, the company cried trade secrets. The real secret, of course, was that Theranos didn't have any trade secrets because its machines didn't work. But her answer worked for a long time. She was a con artist. With Theranos, her blood testing company, Elizabeth Holmes fooled investors, employees, and media outlets. Holmes wasn't a creature of Silicon Valley, or so the refrain went. Her conviction? Holmes was found guilty of 4 of 11 charges of fraud. She was sentenced to more than 11 years in prison, which she began serving this past Tuesday on May 30th. She's adopted a new persona. Months after her sentencing, Holmes was interviewed by the New York Times, her first time speaking to the media since 2016. The black turtlenecks were gone, and so was the deep voice. Hiding fraud behind the imperatives of secrecy wasn't the only way Miss Holmes' actions were rooted in tradition. Her self-improvement plan dated back to Ben Franklin, but found its most indelible expression in F. Scott Fitzgerald's creation of Jay Gatsby, the mysterious, alluring, handsome millionaire who also ran a few swindles. As with most con artists, at whatever level they're at, if they're at the street level or this corporate level, the billionaire level, there's something about them that is both charming, super organized, a person of habit, and just out there, an amazing salesperson. And this is called salesperson, saleswoman. She was tremendous, and she had charm. To join me tonight in discussing the Theranos case, and of course, Miss Elizabeth Holmes, because she just surrendered Tuesday to federal prison in Texas to begin serving an 11-year sentence. To join me this evening is retired NYPD Sergeant, Professor of Criminal Justice at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, and law degree, is Mike Geary. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Billy, thank you for having me on tonight. Good to see you.
Well, I know that you have a lot of experience in this case. You have a lot of knowledge in this case. Who better to put on with me than you?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Billy. This is a great case because it's got all of the trappings of, that glamour, the West Coast glamour, the chutzpah, as you say, the nerve to take chances, put it all out there, go for it, lie your butt off, and take people's money and keep up that face despite all kinds of, allegations that your company is nothing but a big fraud, and to sit there and say, and to go actually after the people who are investigating you and saying, I'm revolutionizing the medical industry and they're jealous, so I'm taking on the powers that be. She had chutzpah in spades. It's an amazing story. Yeah.
Look who she's standing next to here in this photo. So she had everyone conned, from the highest levels of government to the wealthiest people on this earth. And, Mike, I've always, in my career in the NYPD, and I'm sure yours too, you've met some brilliant criminals. Criminals, well, I wouldn't say brilliant, but you put it in a way that, wow, dude, if you put your talents to legal activities, you'd probably be rich. Instead, you're putting it towards crime. And here we have this woman, Elizabeth Holmes, is extremely, extremely talented, charming, born salesperson, able to con some of the wealthiest, most influential people in the world. Let me just play this short little video here. This is of an investigative reporter named John Carreyrou, who sort of pulled the rug out from under Theranos.
8,000 stores in the U.S. So you can imagine that the Theranos blood test would have been available at almost every street corner.
Folks, I apologize. What he's referring to is that at the time that this company was booming, they were able to get this blood test in CVS drugstores. So you just heard him say 8,000 stores across this nation. Imagine the level of bullshit that had to be available there. And how did the CEO and the people that vet this type of thing, again, she had everyone conned. So one of the biggest drugstore chains in the nation, if not the biggest, took this product and was endorsing it in their stores, and not just endorsing it, but paying for it.
Cut a $140 million deal. On the heels of that news, she assembled an all-star board of government heavyweights.
Look at that. Look at that, Mike. Look at that all-star board. James Mattis, Henry Kissinger, George Schultz, William Frist, Samuel Nunn, Gary Roughead, and William Perry. So, they're William Perry, former Secretary of Defense, Gary Roughead, former Chief of Naval Operations, Samuel Nunn, former Senator of Georgia, James Mattis, a Marine Corps general who, of course, rose in the Trump administration, Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State George Shultz, former Secretary of State William Frist, former Senator Tennessee. Scary. These people were on this board. Who was vetting this company, Mike?
Right. Nobody was vetting this company. They probably were a group of people, venture capitalists. They had money to burn. They wanted to take chances. And they saw this as, if true, this would make a fortune. And they wanted to be the first, be on the ground floor, be the ones who actually gave flight to her imagination, and to take this company from, a small little startup with one person at the head, a whole lot of nerve. This would probably, in their minds, be a multi-billion-dollar corporation. In a few short years, it would be in Europe. They'd have CVS's. This would be a worldwide company, probably one of the biggest companies in the medical industry in the foreseeable future. So they took a huge chance, and they just forgot common sense.
The piece that really vaulted her to fame and stardom was the cover story in Fortune magazine
The article states that Theranos offers more than 200 blood tests without a syringe. But precisely how Theranos accomplishes all these amazing feats is a trade secret.
You saw her almost once a week, either gracing a magazine cover or attending a tech conference.
But what part of the con, to me, I don't really get it totally, was the low voice. Why did she get the idea that that would ingratiate herself into investors and allow them to part with millions of dollars? We have a really good machine that takes up drop. I mean, why did she do that? I don't know.
The only thing I could think of as we were talking about it for the last, going over it, I'm thinking talking low and slow in very definite, kind of like a monotone. I think it probably she did it to make people listen to her more. Because if she's just talking like you and me, and we're just talking, and gesticulating all over the place, yeah, some things you'll hear, some things you won't. But if I'm talking to you like this, William, and I need you to invest $100 million in my system, you're going to be listening. So that's right. That's the only thing I could think of is that she understood, the oral sensation that you get from hearing that low, quiet voice.
But I think it was very well thought of. It was thought of to the point that, wait, this is part of the con. This is how I'm going to get people to part with all their money, because I'm going to have this maybe mystique or this mysterious background, drinking green carrot juice, whatever. It's not carrot juice would be orange, asparagus juice, whatever she's drinking, and this, wearing this, the black turtleneck and all of that stuff. It's like, it's all part of that mystique, I think. And, Bernie Madoff, I mean, he dressed like a businessman. He was able to con everybody, and he would con people in his own family. And it seems like, I think that Miss Holmes would do the same. I don't think she had any morals either in regards to who she would con, or who she would put the fraudulent story to.
Yeah, we know she would probably do that. Absolutely, you're right, because she knowingly was putting a machine out there in Walgreens, and knowing people would be using the test results to determine their medical treatment. She knew that. It wasn't like something that oh my God, I didn't know that was actually going on. No, she knew it. It's unconscionable that you would endanger people's lives like that. Yeah, absolutely no conscience whatsoever. None.
And the gentleman, the only journalist really that really put the wood to her was this guy, John Carreyrou,
Yes.
who worked for the Wall Street Journal, who incidentally was owned by Rupert Murdoch, who lost, what was it? He invested $125 million, and now he's got one of his reporters, John Carreyrou, breaking this story.
And,
yeah.
It was a case where
irony.
Not only were investors defrauded, but patients were put in harm's way. And I think that's the most outrageous part of this whole story. Even if she wasn't found technically guilty on the patient fraud counts, I think the impact on patients and the way her actions and Sunny Balwani's actions jeopardized the public health were a huge part of this. And so in light of those things, I'm not surprised that the judge chose to impose a stiff sentence. There's also the deterrence factor.
That was going to be my last question, the impact on Silicon Valley going forward.
And Judge Davila made very clear that was foremost in his mind in meting out the sentence, that he described the evolution of this valley from an agricultural valley to the hotbed of technological innovation that it is today, and explain that people from all over the world come here and look to Silicon Valley for its innovation and its creativity, and but that all that relies on trust. And so it was very clear that in large part this was a tough sentence to set an example. He called the Theranos scandal a cautionary tale.
John Carreyrou let's give him the kudos. He's the one that brought down Theranos with his book Bad Blood. Tremendous job. There's some good people in the chat that I wanted to read a couple of things that I was looking for. I just lost it for a second. Basically, I just lost it. Basically, what here it is. David Cohen. I was told the amount of deaths was so many, over 5,000. I'm sure she's going to walk away with that $2 billion and get what, 5 years. David Cohen, I don't know if they can put a number on how many people, their health, or if anyone died from the false tests that they did. I don't know. Allegedly, she walked away broke. I don't know if I believe that either. The other thing is, and a question I saw some of you guys asking is, how about the CVS and Walgreens, the drugstores that put that out there? Aren't they liable, Mike? You're an attorney. Aren't they liable to get sued?
I think it could be, because did they do their due diligence in using a product that with a little bit of diligence on their part would have been determined not to be reliable. So there's possibility of liability, civil liability, for Walgreens and CVS if a death could be connected back to the use of that machine, which in CVS or Walgreens, that affected a patient's treatment and resulted in death. It's a long shot, but as the listener, Mr. Cohen, I agree 100%. There's probably some out there, the chain like Walgreens, if they escape a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit industry. Just like you see the Camp Lejeune, compensation going out there to all the Marine Corps veterans who were on Camp Lejeune for many, many years. Same thing. If you tie one death back to Elizabeth Holmes' machine being used by Walgreens, and Walgreens being liable for not doing their due diligence and making sure this machine's reliable, then that would crack open many, many lawsuits and could maybe bankrupt the company.
Barbara Ann, there was a lot of financial deception for the con, but it goes beyond that. There's a hint of psychopathy.
Yeah.
Psychopathy.
Yeah.
Our ambition was envied by others. The media is complicit as well. You are 100% right, and I think that we see this a lot in today. When we look at Silicon Valley, do we see all goodness, or do we see? I think half the world right now is terrified over AI, artificial intelligence. We don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, and it's yet to be determined because it hasn't been out long enough. There's people that say AI could take over the world, but don't forget, AI is run by people. People can be evil. People can be criminals, as you see in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And just I'd like to go on record. I think that Elizabeth Holmes, even the writer, John Carreyrou, he said it was a stiff sentence. I don't view it as that. I believe 20 years would have been a stiff sentence. Don't forget, she's in Club Fed, and many of you will say, oh, yes, but she's behind wall. Yes. But you know something? There's people that snatch a purse that are behind walls too. And a lot less amenities than Club Fed here, And what she did was as egregious, or more egregious, of course, than snatching a purse. And she deceived so many. And we don't know, could anyone have indirectly lost their life because of this?
Yeah, Billy, we don't know, because probably it would take an investigative report like Mr. Carreyrou, years to uncover all the patients that may have been affected by bad tests that were, the results of which came from those machines. It would take quite a long time, and I'm sure places like CVS, they're not going to cooperate. They don't want to know. They just want to bury it. And so the media is complicit, in this whole thing, and CVS and places like that. They want it buried. She's got her sentence. Okay, it's over. Close the books on it. Let's move on. And that's sad. That's very sad.
Yes. Mike, I've said a million times. Before I read Sandio's thing, that the media is as guilty through commission as they are through omission.
That's
And
right.
what I mean by that is they cherry pick the stories they'll do
Mhm.
according to their political ideology. And that is sad, because there could be a huge story that goes against their specific print journalism or broadcast journalism station, and they simply won't report on it because it goes against their political ideology. A good example of that was the Nashville, Tennessee active shooter.
Mhm.
Many stations gave that almost no coverage, and it was a huge story because many stations didn't like the political look of that story.
Right.
So again, commission, omission, omitting by not reporting on a story because it goes against your political ideology. I find that extremely egregious. Sandy O, police off the cuff. Don't people with federal charges only go to federal prison? According to federal laws, don't they have to do 85% of their sentence? Sandy O, you're correct. People with federal charges do only. I was just making a comparison between state prison and federal prison. Yes, federal prisons, if you're charged federally, you're only going to go to a federal prison. However, it's just a whole difference in ideology in regards to how you're punished. And Mike, I don't know about the 85% of their sentence. Do you know anything about that, Mike?
I mean, I don't know. I do. There has been over the course of many years some federal prisoners that may have done some time in a state prison, or they have a prison system and a state is overcrowded. They might, a convict might be transferred to another state and do time there. I think the confusion may be about the club fed thing. If somebody's in the mafia and they get hauled into federal court and they're convicted, like say John Gotti in New York, they'll do time in a federal penitentiary, and it won't be club fed. Club fed is just as you were talking about, is just for some special people, not for the run of the mill mobster or like the Tsarnaev brother who is in federal prison. That's certainly not club fed. Some of those federal prisons are as tough as the state prisons, but club fed is for those special people.
Well, she's obviously special, and maybe, and I can be super cynical, maybe because of the connections she had, maybe because of some of the people that were on her board, could that have influenced the judge in his sentencing? I mean, well, you heard John Carreyrou, who wrote this book on this case, Bad Blood, a national bestseller, Secret and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. Look, I can imagine, Mike, that Silicon Valley is not a very clean place as far as following the rules of law in regards to, look, we went through the .com thing where people were literally selling air and selling it for millions of dollars. What is Facebook? What are all of these?
Nothing.
What is Instagram? What is TikTok? What is, Snapchat? What are all these things? We are all in our society, we are all addicted in one way or the other to social media. And whether that is through our computer or through our cell phone, people could say, oh, I don't know anyone that doesn't have a cell phone, because you want to join the world in the 21st century. You want to be able to be open to the modern conveniences. Basically, you need a cell phone. Yes. And that is, of course, connected to a computer in some way. And if you don't or unable to operate a computer or a cell phone, you might as well go back into the cave and hit two rocks together to get a spark and start a fire, because that's where you're going to be in today's society. But at the same time, it's holding power over us, a tremendous amount of power over us, both psychologically and in a real sense, because we need this phone. If you don't believe what I'm saying, folks, lose your phone for about 10 minutes in your house, or 15 minutes, or an hour in your house, and you tell me if you're not semi-panicking. Mike, am I telling the truth?
It's a cultural thing. It's cultural. I'm sorry. It's a generational thing. I always tease my students. I'm like, take your cell phone, turn it off on a Friday, and don't turn it on again until a Monday morning. See if you could survive an entire weekend. And they all laugh because they know they couldn't. And I said, I back in the day, I remember my home when I was a little kid having a telephone in the kitchen and had the little spirally cord that used to always get tangled. There was one phone in the house, and that's it. And they're just shocked, like that's the way the world was. And yeah, I have all my music on here. I've got I look for interesting facts that pop into my head. I want a geography fact, a history fact. I want to send a quick, funny email or text message to my daughters. That's what we'll do. It's become the one thing where you can get almost everything that's intellectually stimulating, either in terms of reading or entertainment, sound, music, all in one place. It's a revolutionary object, and we are addicted to it. And I admit, my phone is never off. It's on 24/7. I've got it out. I've got it with me. I wish I didn't have to have it with me.
Mike, you would have never been on today's show if it wasn't for your cell phone.
Because this is how you contacted me today.
That's right. That's right. You don't want to hear something sad? Is that I don't know my wife's cell phone number unless I can look it up in my own cell phone. Don't tell her. Don't anyone rat me out. But it's true, and she gets mad. She does know that. She gets, what do you mean you don't have my number memorized? I just don't. I
just press a button.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I just look up your name and boom, it's there. But I don't. The need to have someone's telephone number memorized, it doesn't exist anymore because you can just was spoiled. Folks, I want to thank everyone. We went way over where we wanted to go today, but I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And again, if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. We just came up with this idea today to do this story, and Mike is a lot more expertise on this than I do, but I think it's a super interesting story because we see how different people are treated differently in our society, and also how the press treats people. This should have been broken by the press much earlier than it was. And that's a lesson to be learned also. Mike, final words.
Final words. I tend to be something of a cynical person, I guess, because of being a police officer for 20 years. But I think the old adage, like we said, if it's too good to be true, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And, there's a sucker born every minute. Yeah, there are people out there that are preying on poor people and defrauding them. But there's also people who are trying to defraud, the really wealthy people. They're out there, and it's the same personality type. They're controlling. They like to lie. They can lie with a straight face, tell you things. They're good people, connecting skills. They could read people. They're the used car salesman kind of, and I don't mean to say anything bad about the used car salesman, but that sort of ability to talk constantly and to figure out what's in people's head. That's an amazing gift that people like Elizabeth Holmes had. And unfortunately, rather than raise money legitimately for a good technological machine that may work for 20 years, she took a shortcut, lied to everybody. So, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
I just want to say one quick thing about Elizabeth Holmes. She's got tremendous skills.
Yeah.
She has tremendous talent. She wouldn't have got as far as she did if she didn't have tremendous. Unfortunately, she put it in the direction of crime, of a criminal, of a hoax, of fraud, of a con. But she's tremendously talented. Folks, thank you so much for listening today. Have a great night, and God bless everybody.
Good night.
One episode just ain't enough.